Hello and welcome, I'm Gautam Roy and you're watching a special show here on DD India. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be taking a deep dive into Nepalese elections. Remember, polling has concluded in the first election after the 2025 protests which ousted the government of Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. A lot is at stake for Nepal and its fledgling democracy. How did the youth vote? Will Nepal see a stable government? We'll be joined by DD India's Shweta Singh and Siddharth Bhardwaj from Kathmandu. And also joining us would be former diplomat Veena Sikri to put the election in its proper context and perspective for you, to help us all make sense of it. Now, 60% of around 19 million voters in Nepal turned out at different polling stations countrywide in the Himalayan nation to elect a new legislature which will decide who heads the next government. Expectations of political shift in Nepal have been sky high since the ouster of the KP Sharma Oli government in September last year as a result of a youth-led protest which has been seeking a generational shift from the old guard which has dominated the nation's politics for nearly 2 decades.
Voters across Nepal turned out in significant numbers as the country held its latest elections with around 60% voter turnout reported nationwide. Officials say the voting was largely peaceful as citizens cast their ballots to decide the country's next political leadership. Coming after the youth-led protests in September last year, these elections are being viewed by many as historic. Polling began at 7 a.m. and continued until 5 p.m. with long queues seen at several polling stations across the country. Voters turned out in large numbers to exercise their franchise with high expectations, particularly the youth who are considered a decisive factor in these polls.
I'm feeling really excited, like so much eager to know the results and everything. People are in the ministry now, and then Prime Minister is more educated now because like we really didn't have anyone educated as much as now. There are really good candidates, and I hope they all win and make our country great.
We are finally here in election day to vote, and we voted for the best candidate as we thought. And so I really want as everyone wants to minimize the corruptions, so we can't like hope for the sudden changes, but least thing they can do is like less corruption. And the next thing is development in education and hospital area.
While many expressed happiness after casting their votes, they also said the next government must focus on tackling corruption and creating more opportunities for young people.
My expectation from the upcoming government, whoever comes to power, is basically we need a little bit of stability in the country.
With Nepal following a mixed electoral system, each voter was given 2 ballot papers, one for the first past the post system and another for proportional representation. Security arrangements were tight across the country with additional security personnel deployed to ensure the elections remained safe and peaceful. Results for the first past the post ballots are expected within 24 hours, while the proportional representation results will take longer to be finalized. These crucial elections are expected to shape the political direction of Nepal in the coming years and determine how the country responds to the demands for reform voiced by its citizens. Report by Siddharth Bhardwaj for DD India.
Now, these elections are being widely viewed as a contest between traditional political forces and a new generation of leaders advocating systemic reform. Let's take a look at the key contenders. Balendra Shah of the Rashtriya Swatantrata Party, a former rapper whose songs featured prominently in his campaign, has positioned himself as a symbol of youth-driven political change in Nepal. Shah, who served as mayor of Kathmandu until January, is contesting against former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli in the Jhapa 5 constituency. Oli, a 74-year-old leader of the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist UML, who was ousted as Prime Minister last year, is seeking to retain his political influence from the same constituency. Meanwhile, Pushpakamal Dahal, popularly known as Prachanda, a three-time former Prime Minister representing the Nepali Communist Party, is contesting from the Eastern Rukum constituency. Another prominent figure, Gagan Thapa of the Nepali Congress, 49-year-old leader who has vowed to challenge the dominance of the old age club of veteran politicians, is competing from the Sarlahi Fort constituency. Additionally, Rajendra Prasad Lingdin of the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party represents a right-wing conservative force that advocates for the restoration of Nepal's monarchy. Okay, let's go across to former senior diplomat Veena Sikri and get her perspective on it. Good evening to you, Veena Sikri. What do you make of this election in Nepal with a 60% voter turnout? It could be argued that it doesn't really reflect the kind of enthusiasm for change that was expected after what happened in September last year, because 60% is among the lowest turnout in the last 17 odd years.
Yes, indeed. I think we have to really recall the color revolution that swept Nepal last September. And these elections are the direct outcome of those events last September, when the KP Sharma Oli government was brought down by the Gen Z protest. And former Chief Justice Sushila Karki has very ably led the Nepal people and government to stability, because otherwise, after a Gen Z color revolution like happened in September, anything could have happened. But I think the army prevented the situation from worsening, and very quickly there was an agreement on Ms. Sushila Karki as the head of the interim government, and she has very efficiently and ably kept Nepal stable and peaceful and has been able to organize the elections held today. But I think we have to remember that the Nepal new constitution that they have given themselves has really led to serious instability. They've had 14 governments in the last 17 years. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. Leave alone 5-year term, hardly governments have been able to stay more than a couple of years in office. So this has been a really tremendous bout of instability in Nepal's national political system. And part of the reason for that is that in the lower house of representatives, the Pratinidhi Sabha, for which elections were held today, they have a total of 275 seats. But of these 275 seats, only 165 are direct election, first past the post. And the other 110 are proportional representation. And even now you will see that maybe they will be able to declare the results for 165 seats a little bit early in the next day or so. But the proportional representative seats of 110 will be declared much later, because it's a more complicated counting and nomination system. So with the result of this complicated combination of first past the post and proportional representation, no single party is able to have a majority. And this inevitably leads to coalition governments, which by their very nature are unstable and do not last. So even now, it was a very unstable coalition, and Nepali Congress was a member of the coalition, although KP Sharma Oli was the Prime Minister. But Nepali Congress was supposed to have the last a couple of years, 2.5 years as Prime Minister in the life of this government, but they couldn't finish this life. So I think we have to see, why did this happen? Why did that Gen Z revolution take place? Yes, you've seen a lot of people in your visuals you're showing talking about corruption and talking about opportunities for the youth. But was this an inspired color revolution? What was behind it? Why did it suddenly erupt? And then, because of the army taking control and bringing back stability, they went, we were able to have this peaceful transition. Now, the candidates who are there, the three major candidates that are being talked about, for the most part, are, yes, from the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, the Balendra Shah, the rapper who has been mayor of Kathmandu for some time till he stepped down in January. And he is being talked about as maybe somebody that the Gen Z will vote for the most. But the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, they don't really have a manifesto of their own. They are really a group of people who came from other different parties and very recently formed this Rashtriya Swatantra Party. So what is their program? What will they do? it is not clear. In fact, even Balendra Shah during his campaigning did not reveal very much about what he will do and what will be the position of his party on various issues of national concern, including programs for the youth. Then you have Gagan Thapa, who is the new leader of one of the oldest parties of Nepal, the Nepali Congress, and he actually was able to take control of the party from the old generation leadership, which was Sheikh Bahadur Doiba, who was the prime ministerial candidate who would have become the prime minister had the government not fallen. And Gagan Thapa does represent the Gen Z. Will he get a large majority of votes? Because the Nepali Congress is attractive for the older generation, because it is a party of stability, a party that has an old history in Nepal, and has led Nepal through many elections and governments, and has given an important manifesto also. So
right. We'll talk about the other contenders as well, Ms. Sikri. Let me just hold you for a second, because we have my colleague and DD India Siddharth Bhajwa joining us live from Kathmandu. Siddharth, what kind of an impression did you get in terms of the voters that were turning out to vote today, particularly from the younger generation, because there were 1 million new voters as well? To what extent were they able to ensure that in the first place the turnout is impressive enough to indicate that this is a mandate for change, which somehow 60% or roundabouts does not really connote?
See, Gautam, when we talk about the voting percentage of 2022, then it was somewhere about 61% last time when the elections happened in the year 2021. And this time around,
so no dramatic increase,
and,
in fact a decrease.
Not to my surprise, but we saw a lot of Gen Zs outside the polling stations, and they were saying that they are very happy to vote, but then again, they were saying that they are voting for a change. Change is something that they have kept as central when they're going inside the polling stations. They are saying that they expect a lot when it comes to the new government which will be formed in Nepal. They want the new government to focus on the youth. They want government to generate more and more employment opportunities for the Gen Zs and for the youth, for the overall people of Nepal. So that they don't have to go outside the countries. You see, migration is a major issue, one of the major issues here in Nepal. And when you talk about it, you have a lot of Nepali people who are working in some other countries or working abroad. So they don't want to work abroad. They say that, if the government will take out opportunities for us, then we'll work in our own country and we'll take care of our families. And a lot of the things that they can do, which they can't do, especially during the emergency period, the emergency situations, I beg your pardon. If they have to come, they have to think twice before coming, because of the financial reasons as well. And when the Gen Z protest took place last year in the month of September, it majorly took a hit on country's economy and also political stability. For that, for its revival, these elections are very, very crucial. And, you have some main contenders also who are fighting these elections. And the battle is tough, but then, you can say these polls are a battle between the new leaders and the battle between old traditional political parties. Well, some people are saying that Gen Z is dominating these elections. On the other hand, some people are saying that no, Gen Zs are not dominating. The old political parties and candidates, they still have their domination in these elections. The result will tell. The counting for first past the post, which has 165 seats, starts, and the results are expected by 5 p.m. tomorrow. So pretty much would be clear as to who is leading these elections. But then again, proportional representation has 110 seats. Those are not less seats, but it will take a while because it's a complicated process, as our esteemed guest told our viewers as well. So it will take a while, when the final results will come. But then, these are very, very interesting elections because you don't know which party will win. Otherwise, you can assume, during previous elections, Gautam, you've also seen in Nepal that by assumption itself, pretty much is clear that who is going to win these elections. But in these elections, nothing is clear. Only the results will tell. However, again, I would say some people are saying that Gen Zs are dominating, and some people are saying that old political parties still have the large share.
Yes, Ms. Sikri, this sort of a turnout would give hope still to the old guard that they hold certain amount of sway, or does it tell us that it's just that people are disinterested to a large extent in terms of not being able, even if they were willing to have a change of mandate, not being able to really translate it into going to polling stations to actually do the deed of ensuring that that change happens?
Yeah, that's true. I think I would have expected that the voter turnout would be larger, much larger than last time, because of the way in which these elections were forced upon the people of Nepal, the color revolution of September 2025, and also that there's so much Gen Z interest and many more should have come out to vote. But I think what the outcome is going to be is perhaps still a hung assembly. Maybe number 1 and number 2 positions will be shared between the RSP, Balan Shah, and the Nepali Congress, Gagan Thapa. I think that will be the ultimate thing. Now, who will get more and whether they can form a coalition government or whether RSP will be able to form a government on its own, these are the questions to be watched. But, as I was saying, actually, the Nepali Congress has people who will vote for them from the older generation and the younger generation. So that may give them a little edge, over the RSP, which has just a Gen Z vote. Certainly, some of the Gen Z vote will go to the Nepali Congress. But let's see in numbers. Your visuals did show that the people who came out to vote were largely the younger ones. They were largely younger ones, very few among the older generation. So whether this will mean that the communist parties will see Pushpa Kamal, Prachand and KP Sharma Oli, whether their parties will see a falling off in the vote. I do predict that. I do think that the communist parties will receive a far smaller percentage of the vote this time. And between Balan Shah's RSP and the Nepali Congress, we have to watch. It's very interesting that in Japa 5, from where KP Sharma Oli is standing, he's in direct contest with Balan Shah. So, that is a very interesting contest that has to be watched. The outcome has to be watched very carefully, because if Balan Shah loses that contest, then he will not be able to become Prime Minister. So will KP Sharma Oli fall in his own constituency? That is to be seen. And it's interesting also that many people have left the Kathmandu Valley seats that they were contesting earlier and have gone to contest from the Madhesh region. So you have even both Gagan Thapa and Balan Shah are contesting from seats in the Madhesh. And that is very interesting, trying to get their support. So the very well-established older Madheshi parties may not do well this time, because we've seen the major parties like the Nepali Congress and RSP actually going and contesting in the Madhesh and trying to attract people from the Madhesh to vote for the larger parties, the traditional parties, rather than the smaller Madhesh parties. So this is another change that one could expect this time. But let's watch. We will know by tomorrow or by the day after about the final results.
Mm-hmm. What has also been talked about is the undercurrent of harking back to the times that have gone by, the monarchy, the reign of the monarchy being a Hindu state. Do you feel that that is an undercurrent which might still be relevant in this day and age when we're talking about the resurgence of or the exercising of a lot of influence of youth power?
Yes, that is, Gyanendra Shah, the former Prince Gyanendra Shah. He has been campaigning, and every time he's there, a large number of audiences do turn up for his speeches and rallies. So obviously there is an attraction for the monarchy to return, but I don't see it really getting many seats this time because of the attraction of the Gen Z for the young Balendra Shah, former mayor of Kathmandu. So I think that that seems to be a big attraction. And then Gagan Thapa, I think, will get some seats because of the traditional role of the Nepali Congress. But in a few constituencies, maybe, Gyanendra Shah and his representatives may get a few seats. But let's see how it turns out. I think primarily it's going to be between the RSP and the Nepali Congress.
Right. Now, what the youth, Ms. Sikri, was seeking were accountability, end of corruption, or at least some kind of control over it, and a lot of development and reform which will be garnered to, serving the needs of the youth themselves, be it education or jobs. Now, is it also evident to them that none of these contestants, be it people like Balendra Shah or the old guard, they don't have a magic wand, and there are certain things that are intrinsic to Nepal and its economy which will take a lot of doing and a lot and time, clearly, to change. So, first of all, it is the instability that you mentioned, that is not being addressed at all.
Absolutely. I mean, 14 governments in 17 years. So no government can even begin to fulfill their agenda before the instability comes about and the government falls, you know. So this has been a big problem, and it has really affected the development of Nepal very seriously, because they really have a lot of poverty, particularly in the mountain regions, and joblessness. People are leaving. They go and build, they're building the football stadiums for the football cup in Qatar and so on. And they're not used to working in those hot climates, and so many people lose their lives, and the body bags are coming back to Nepal with the people who've lost their lives when going abroad for construction work. It's very tragic. It's very, very sad, and I think Nepal deserves stability, and they deserve change, and they deserve that a government which will be able to actually conduct itself for 5 years. And that's why there's so much talk in Nepal that ultimately they may have to give up this proportional representative system for 110 seats in the Pratinidhi Sabha, and in the lower house of representatives. There's a lot of talk of that. There's talk of, then further constitutional change will be talked about. Then once you start opening the Pandora's box of constitutional change, and so many other things come in. So I think Nepal has a very, very complex period ahead. And if these elections do throw up a stable government, that will be a wonderful thing for the future of Nepal. But again, in the RSP, the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, they haven't given a clear manifesto as to what they would like to do, what is their agenda, how will they provide the jobs, how will they bring the youth back to Nepal. So that also is not clear. So it's only after the government is formed that we will have a clear idea of the agenda. So I think there's a lot hanging on these elections, but a lot of uncertainty as well. All that the people of Nepal must be hoping for, most of all, is that these elections throw up a stable government and they are able to last their full term and do something, bring development and prosperity to the people of Nepal.
Yes, and for a country like India, which has had such close relations with Nepal, not just in terms of proximity geographically, but in every possible way, people to people, culture, and of course a lot of to and fro of people as well. A lot of Nepalis also work in India. To what extent is having this election and producing a stable result of critical interest to India?
It is of great political interest to India because, India had the closest possible relations with Nepal. We have an open border. There's a discussion to review that treaty. All these, there's so many issues now. There's a new territorial issue also, which was created by KP Sharma Oli, put it even on the banknotes. These are irritants which are introduced, and perhaps because of the communist parties, the various communist parties, they're always much closer to China. They face pressure from China, and so they do all these strange things. But India is interested in the stability and prosperity and democracy in Nepal. We really want that our neighbors should have democracy, stability and prosperity. And, Nepal is a very essential part of India's neighborhood first foreign policy, because we have really been ready to give Nepal everything that they need in order that they have stability and prosperity and the democratic system that the people yearn for. We hope that these elections will throw up a stable government which can do something for the people of Nepal. So we are interested in their development in every which way, and we're prepared to help them also. We have helped them in the past. We are continuing to help them. We are working even in the sub-regional, the BBIN, the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal progress and programs, which include giving of electricity from, say, Bhutan to Nepal through India, and Nepal to Bangladesh. Bhutan to Bangladesh through India, and Nepal to Bangladesh through India. That agreement has already been signed and some transmission has already started. It's a small amount, 40 megawatts, but still it shows that sub-regional cooperation for mutual prosperity can work very well. So India has a lot of ideas because Nepal and India are both in BIMSTEC and we are very, very interested in pushing sub-regional cooperation for mutual prosperity of the people.
Yes, certainly, and we have pursued that very, very consistently, and let's hope that this election produces a result which produces a stable government, which is the first perhaps order of the day where Nepal's future is concerned politically and otherwise. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Ms. Veena Sikri. And with that, it's a wrap on this special broadcast. The news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching the show. Good night.